Okay, guys. A little late. Had some issues with some connectivity. Yeah, it's been a banner day. So we have a couple of guests that will be joining us. Of course, Julia and Jill. Jill is coming back from a tracking event, and Julia hopefully will joining us. Will be joining us fairly shortly. Um, we have, I hope, a good show tonight. And basically, we're going to be talking about breeders, what constitutes a good one, what to look for when you're looking for a breeder, and what to stay away from. In all honesty, got a couple of secrets of my own to tell, and we'll basically see what's going on. So hopefully, I didn't chase away all of my uh, watchers, listeners, whatever. Hi, Karen. How you doing? I'm waiting for some folks to join us. I've already sent the whatchamacallits out. I'm hoping that it's on Insta as well. I've been having some problems with Insta. It keeps giving deceptive instructions on how to get Insta live. So right now we're on YouTube and Facebook. If you want to join us on YouTube, it's at Lionheart Canine, and we'll be there for a while as well. Hopefully my guests will show up soon. Getting kind of nervous. You didn't see it where? At Insta, Karen? Huh. Well, I can't check because it'll just disrupt what's going on. But basically, yeah. So I I have a new resident. She is a Beauceron German Shepherd dog mix. We have not yet decided on a name for her. She is about 9 weeks ish. We call her a Beaucer-ish or a Shepherd-ish. She's very cute. She's black and tan. She's very sweet. And right now we're basically, oh, Julia is here. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Julia.
Howdy. How's it
So we're
going,
still waiting
Linda?
for Jill. I know that she's en route.
Yeah,
So
cool.
it'll just be us two for a moment, unless we
That's
get
cool.
someone on here who wants to share some conversation with us, which
Yeah.
we'll open up the mic here in a bit. But one of the things that I want to preface before we even start this is the fact that this is not a shop, don't adopt scenario. It is not an adopt, don't shop scenario. This is strictly about breeders of dogs. I don't care if you're a purebred dog breeder, the quote unquote preservation breeder, someone who breeds for function as opposed to someone who breeds strictly for the conformation ring. What we're here to talk about is people who produce dogs, how to look for the dog that suits your lifestyle, and how to select an appropriate or procure an appropriate candidate from a person that is called a breeder. If you own the dam, you're a breeder. That's it. That is the definition of a breeder. So basically, I'm not necessarily. I actually kind of got hoist by my own petard until yesterday. I own all purebred dogs. I have always ever owned purebred dogs. I've had several mixed bred dogs. I've had quite a few random bred dogs. I've had several dogs that I acquired from shelters. I've had cats that I've picked up off the street, stuff. So it's not like I'm new to rescues. Julia also has an extraordinary history with Doberman Rescue. I know that Jill has done rescue work. I think for the most part, if you've been in this business for longer than a minute, in some form or another, you have done rescue work. So there's that. I recently procured a non-purebred from a very reputable breeder. And it was, stuff happens. People that want to sit there and slag on breeders who have oops litters, stuff happens. You think that you have your bitch secured and boys will be boys and they'll find ways. And I had a German Shepherd bitch that would back her ass up to a crate door, and my pointer at the time would mount the crate in order to get to her. So yeah, these things happen. Thankfully, she was sterile. Otherwise, we would have had Jinglish Shoiners running all over the place. But anyways, be that as it may, I had been on the look for a puppy recently, actually for the last several months, and I I decided screw it. Why wait for a purebred when I can get a dog who is bred specifically for the things that I'm looking for in a candidate? It doesn't matter if the dog is purebred. It just matters that the dog has the ability to do the things that I want it to do. So here we are. A little bit. Um, we're vacillating on names for her. That will be announced sometime in the near future. But right now, she's just kind of hanging out and, getting her head on straight and figuring out how life is here, considering she came out of a very hale and hearty litter of 9 with a very active environment. So now she's here, and hopefully she'll like it here. We'll see. But anyway, so one of the things that we, one of the things that we talk about all the time when it comes to procuring or acquiring dogs, I am not ever going to use any other language besides purchase or buy. And if that offends you, we will go with procure or acquire. We do not adopt dogs. We do not, what's the other word that they use? Rescue. We do not rescue dogs. We purchase them.
Right.
So if money changed hands, that's a transaction that puts you in the ownership role. That is,
I'm sorry, that forever. I've been saying that for forever. If money exchanged hands, then you purchased a dog. And if you spent time looking for that dog, whether it's from a shelter, a rescue, a breeder, wherever, if you spent time looking, then you shopped. Even if it was free, you shopped.
Yep.
And then, if money exchanged hands, absolutely, you purchased a dog, and good for you.
Hi, Nate. One of the breeders, I think that's Nate. It might be Gretchen. I don't know. One of the people that we're actually going to be discussing is Iron Oak Dog Company, Nate Zarnata and Gretchen Verline, both of whom have produced some spectacular litters of Klein Munsterlanders, which is a small breed of hunting dog that is suitable for not only birds, but upland birds, but duck hunting and furred game also. So I have had the opportunity to do a couple of their evals of their puppies following the APET puppy system, which is actually a very good system. And I have to say, Gretchen has been spectacular in all of the imprinting that she's been doing with these puppies. There's been 3. They've had 3 litters, and I've been able to adjudicate over all 3 of them. And one is just better than the other. I mean, they are so well prepared for their lives away from their breeder. They've been exposed to being crated. They've been exposed to travel. They've been exposed to novel environments. They've been exposed to strangers. They've been exposed to noise. They've been exposed to other dogs. They've been exposed to all of these things, which makes them very well prepared to go out into the world and live successful lives with humans. And the thing is this is not secular to people like Nate and Gretchen or any of the people I know who breed dogs for a specific purpose. This is within the grasp of anybody who produces a litter. And yes, litters are work. However, it's not that much work, right? If you have, it's like we care for anywhere between 3 and 10 animals a month, all of whom are adults, and most of whom, with the exclusion of my own dogs, they come here because they're jerks, right? And the vast majority of stuff that they do could have been completely bypassed had some of these things been done with them when they were puppies. Now, of course, obviously, several things can go wrong as the dog matures, like you don't pay attention to it, or you kind of miss some of those imprint periods and the dog is allowed to grow up on its own without, a lot of interaction with the humans and stuff like that, and they can go wild. But the bottom line is if you do these simple things, there's absolutely no reason that dog cannot live a productive and successful life in any home. The cool thing that I like about the APET system is that it actually enables you to be able to very carefully select the appropriate home for each of those puppies in that litter. Now, I've done these for Sandy Stokes, who is Red Barn Ranch Labrador Retrievers. I've done these for Nate and Gretchen. And I have to say, although it's a limit of 2, and having been a breeder myself, the bottom line is nobody knows those puppies better than the person who has their hands on them multiple times a day, every day. They have the best optics to be able to select the appropriate dog for the appropriate home. And I'll be honest with you, I don't, I mean, I've been working with Sandy for quite a few years now, and I don't think that any of the dogs that, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 puppies over the course of, that's exactly how you spell it, Andy, APET, right? All caps. But basically, I don't recall those dogs have to be returned for behavior issues. I believe that the 2 that I'm aware of were returned because of circumstantial changes in the owner's environment, in the owner's life. Well, first of all, Karen, we're going to talk about that because there's parts of puppy culture that are actually really, really great, and there's parts of it that you can throw out with the trash. I'm a big advocate for some of the things that they do as far as socializing in the what I consider to be appropriate socialization, as far as texture, sound, so on and so forth, different surfaces, cold, hot, so on and so forth. And all of that was born from the Super Dog program, which was written by Carmen Battaglia, who used to be a German Shepherd dog breeder, right? And, oh, wow, someone's angry as they drove by my house. Hello. But for the most part, there's a lot of really good stuff. But once they get to the point to where they start doing this redonkulous nonsense about manding and all this other cultish like BS, I kind of lose interest, because the bottom line is first of all, you're not going to be able to address the needs of each of those puppies in that litter for a protracted period of time. We start making placements as breeders between 8 and 10 weeks. There's some people who want to wait a little bit longer. I personally don't want the dog. I don't want the puppy longer than about 10 weeks, unless there's this very specific reason I need to keep that puppy back, maybe because it's got a little bit of sound sensitivity or something like that. The goal is hopefully breeding. I'm selecting the appropriate sires and dams and shouldn't have those problems, but they do occur. And there's events that occur when those puppies' ears and eyes open that basically become significant to that puppy as the puppy matures. So I don't think he worked on it. I think he wrote about it, but I don't think Steve Lindsay worked on it. Unless I see incontrovertible evidence to the other side, it's possible. I know that he did work with the military, but I don't know if he worked on that program. I don't know everything. It's possible. But anyways, yeah, Karen, there, it is a little cultish. And I mean, APET can be too. But the thing is, though, is all of these things, the Volhard method, Julia, are you familiar with other ones?
Yeah, just the Volhard is the one that I'm most familiar with from back in the day. And, I've dealt with people who've gotten puppies who were, basically raised with the puppy culture thing. And I do think, like you said, there's good and bad. I think they get a little bit too into the ideology.
Yeah.
But I imagine that's to be said for almost any of these processes. But I just remember the Volhard method being the big one back when, we would have litters actually at the rescue, at the shelter. And we would have people come up who were schooled up in the Volhard method. And, how accurate is it? I don't know. It's the puppy on a specific day. I've seen dogs that ranked in a certain way as, 9 or 10 week old puppies. You're supposed to do it at 49 days. And sometimes they have to do it later. And, they ended up with like kind of the opposite result, because it's sort of like a snapshot, I think, as much as anything else.
It is.
But, it's something. It's something. And, whenever I get people in here who think that they've done the right thing by getting a puppy from a breeder, but they're just allowed to go in and just, oh, that one likes you, and they just pick whichever one, or they pick the runt, they pick the one that's hiding in the back of the whelping box. And the breeder doesn't necessarily do anything to guide their hand other than in a way that is advantageous to that breeder to get rid of maybe a puppy that they're having trouble placing. And then you just start looking at it and saying, how different is this than going into Debbie's Petland? And You know, they put him in your arms and they say, oh, well, he likes you. So any system, I feel like at least if there's some attempt to sort of categorize what you're looking at, I think that's better than nothing.
It's absolutely better than nothing. And one of the things, and like, you know, when I've evaluated these litters, and this is a common refrain across the board, and I think that everybody, it's not that, you know, the breeders that I've worked with on any aptitude testing, basically is not that, you know, this is what the dog is going to be. You know, it's not cemented into the rest of this dog's life if it has a bad reaction to one of the elements of the test or so on and so forth. It's just a vignette on that day, you know, and it's like basically Sandy Stokes, God bless her, she had a litter of puppies. It took us 2 days to do because there was so many in the litter.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the test, the APET test is long. It's like it takes like 20 minutes to do a test on one puppy. So we had to take, you know, we did so many in the morning before lunch break, and they tell you exactly how to schedule when the puppies need to eat and so on and so forth. So when they come into the test, they come in fresh. But it's like we split it over 2 days. And by the time we were done, we were exhausted. The puppies were exhausted. And basically it's just, you know, it's a lot. So, and you know, like one puppy on, I can't remember what litter it was. It was a lovely little dog. And it just didn't have a good day. So there was elements of the test that showed negatively, if you look at it that way, that shows that this dog would not necessarily be suitable for, you know, a big task like being a service dog or being a Top Gun field dog or something like that. But 2 days later, it was a completely different dog, right? So, you know, it's like all of the other elements being the same. Was the pup, did he have an upset stomach? Was he just not feeling good? Was he tired? What was the problem? But the thing is the critical point, as far as I'm concerned, is I won't buy a dog from a breeder who doesn't do something like this. Right now, I know, I mean, I own 2 dogs bred by Heather Houlihan, my girl Pearl, who's over 11 now, and Rooster, who is 5. He's just turned 5 in August. And when I got, one data point among many, that's correct. But basically, when I lost a dog and Heather was insistent that I wanted this dog, and I'm like, I'm really not in the space for another dog right now. And she's like, just come and look at the damn dog. And I actually had to go to Pennsylvania State University to pick up a dog that I was going to be boarding and training for a while. And she's like, I'm just a couple hours north of there, just come up. So like an idiot I did, and I came home with a dog. A couple of days before Christmas, in the worst weather I had ever seen, and Pearl to this day is like, I ain't getting in no car. I'm just not. She likes being at, she does not like going to. And I believe it was because of that particular day. You know, because I mean, I know Heather, her puppies, they travel, they go everywhere they go, they do all the things, right? She may not do the APET test, and she may not do the Volhard test, but she does a lot of interacting with her puppies, and she's very, very familiar with them. They live in a communal environment. They're always around adult dogs, which is the way I prefer puppies to be raised, because they learn, you know, they go into a new environment. And that's the other thing, is they're able to actually adapt to the presence of other dogs. As long as those other dogs are safe, then these puppies know how to defer to the presence of an adult. They don't act like idiots when the vast majority of puppies that we get, especially dogs that come out of rescues and shelters, they don't know how to act around other dogs. And then they end up either becoming bullies or they get bullied as a result. But anyways, be that as it may, so when it came time for me to get Rooster after I lost his Vi, she's like, what kind of dog do you want? And I said, I want the biggest asshole you have. And we have Rooster, right? And he is. I mean, he's 5 now. He's a lovely dog. He's great. He's just super happy all the time. The dog, he's never had an off day. I don't think he's ever had an off day. And he's just a great dog, but he's an asshole. He can be a little hard when it comes to other dogs. He can be a little on, you know, and he's around other dogs all the time. He and Spider, right before Spider left to go to New England to learn how to be a hunting dog, they started getting stiff-legged with each other because Spider's a young, he just turned 3 years old, and Rooster's like, I'm the cock of the walk, and you got to toe the line. And Spider's kind of like, yeah, dude, no, I don't. So it's like, yeah, okay, a little bit of vacation time's not going to hurt anybody. So have a nice time in New England. I'll see you sometime this spring or this fall, right? But outside of that, he's a great dog. He's got a lot of go.
And I think that's a piece that people don't realize when you hear the general public being kind of steered into vilifying breeders. They picture something different than that. I know that a similar experience with both of my current working dogs. Fox was one in a litter of 4. And he was, I kept in touch once I knew I was approved for a puppy from that litter. I knew I wasn't picking the puppy. He'd be chosen for me. And I'll tell you, like I was nervous. He was the one, the red collar puppy. He's the most independent. He's not as interested in, hanging out with everybody. And I'm like, oh God, give me the easier one.
Right.
But I'll tell you, there's never been a better dog for me. And he was chosen with that in mind, that I would rise to the occasion with him. And he sounds a lot like Rooster. Like when you're describing him, it sounds a lot like same kind of, yeah. And you know what though, he is. I say that to people. I'm like, he's a dick, but he's such a good boy. And
yeah, exactly.
He's exactly what I wanted, and he's more than what I knew I wanted. I didn't even know that I would have the dimensions of just everything about him. He's exactly what I've always wanted. And I say all the time, at the risk of sounding too romantic, he really is the dog of my lifetime.
Yeah.
And Candy also. Candy was raised 12 puppies, and her breeder, I know you love Candy. Candy's so mental. But she's also exactly what I wanted. And she was raised with 12 puppies, and her breeder made sure those puppies went home crate trained, 12 of them.
12
crate trained, raised around, kids, raised around their aunts, that, not just their mother, but aunts and uncles. He had a nice XL bully that was kind of like the uncle that looked after the puppies. And so she was raised around that. And then when those puppies were evaluated, they weren't just evaluated by the breeder, they were evaluated by the stud dog owner, who happens to be a good friend of mine, and by a decoy, a trainer and decoy, who has actually worked with me and Fox. And so they all unanimously chose her for me, the 3 of them. And perfect, exactly what I wanted. And the care that went into that, and the consideration that went into not just the puppies while they were with the breeder, but where are they going to thrive? Where will they excel and be the best version of themselves? I think that the general public has been sort of bamboozled into thinking that breeders are greeters. But then on the other hand, then you have the people who are doing the equivalent, when you used to get like Dog World magazine and you could just like pick an ad and say, I want one of those if I have enough money. And now that's been writ large because of the internet. So there's that end of it too, where it's either I can just go and order myself up a Burble Mastiff by just going online, or all breeders are evil and all they want to do is make money. And somewhere in the middle, there are breeders like the ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I just wish that people who are looking for a puppy had more access to what it should be, not to what it is, because the people who are doing this level of care and consideration, I don't know that they are the majority. I wish they were, obviously, but I feel like they aren't aware that that's even a thing. When I tell people that I didn't pick my puppies, when they see Fox, and they say, oh, how did you choose him? Did you know it was him? I said, I didn't want him. I wanted one of the other ones.
I wanted one of the other ones, right?
My breeder chose him, and she chose better. Like she and there were 3 women who were responsible for that litter, being what it is. And they chose him for me. And people are shocked when I say I didn't choose him and I didn't choose Candy. And I couldn't have chosen better than what I ended up with. And I think that's such a novel idea, and I wish it wasn't.
And the thing is basically, and we've already achieved critical mass by that statement, because we have people who are like, breeders are scum and yada yada yada. And then you have people who are like, oh my God, no, I'm a wonderful breeder. And it's like, what constitutes a wonderful breeder for me is not going to necessarily be a wonderful breeder for somebody else, right? And it's the same thing. It's like when I went to look at this litter, Heather actually was the one that posted it, and or Ken. I think actually I saw Ken's before I saw Heather.
I saw that.
And I contacted Kathy, who owned this litter, and I'm like, I'm interested in finding a successor for my English Shepherd bitch that Heather bred. And I'm looking for something that's reasonable, level-headed. I don't want something super hot like Rooster because I'm freaking old now. I don't have the stamina for that anymore. He's where he is now because it's taken a lot of work to get him there. And he's like Fox. He constantly requires feedback because he's just always on the go, right? Yeah. I thought Pearl was bad because it took her until she was 4. He's 5 and he's still zing. We're doing this thing, whether you want to or not. We're doing this thing. So I wanted something that was a little bit more serene, like Pearl is now. And hopefully this dog, and I mean, both Saran have a tendency to turn on later in life, which I knew. And her sire is a working line German Shepherd dog. So we'll see what that looks like. Right.
But yeah, I mean, exciting. I'm super excited. I think I'm really intrigued. Dog. Yeah. She looks like she will be.
She had, and again, same thing. All the hard stuff was done. Right. All the hard stuff was done. And like Kathy lives on a mountaintop somewhere in the hills, deep in the hills of West Virginia. And, it took us 4 hours to get there. Right. So you can see my level of commitment. And I get there and it's like this beautiful, heavily wooded property. She's got this one paddock or this one little pasture area that's filled with all kinds of search and rescue agility type equipment. And we walked, she's like, you want a female? And I said, yes. So the only thing that we were looking at was females. I wasn't going to muddy the water by looking at a bunch of available males. Right. The last thing I need is another set of balls in this house. Right. So we're looking at the chicas. There was one female had already left. There was another female that had already been gone. So I had 2 to select from. And interestingly enough, they say that basically, the dog more or less picks you. There was White, which is the puppy that we have, and there was Pink. And basically, she was explaining how Pink was a little bit more, her last viewing when she was being looked at by other people. She had a little bit more drive. She was more interested in cuddly with people and all this other stuff. And the White one's like, no, that's me. I couldn't get a crowbar to get this dog off of me, right? And my husband was the same. It's like she kind of knew that she was going home with somebody that day. Yeah. But, they were walking her up and down the agility equipment. She was climbing in things, so cool. Under things, near things, around things. So cool. Had no problems whatsoever. I bring her home, and of course they run drag lines. Social attraction is still fairly strong, but it's not strong enough for a dog I've only had for just over 24 hours now, right? And so she picks up the end of her leash because she's tired of stepping on it and starts carrying it around. Okay, that's prescience. Yeah. That's pretty freaking smart. Nobody taught her that. That was built in. That was part of the yeast and the dough and all that other stuff, right? So, and I'm like, this is the kind of dog that I want. I want a thoughtful dog. Yeah. When people are looking for a dog now, no more penises here either. But basically, it's like
just leave that there forever.
Yeah, we're leaving that forever. What I want a dog is going to be fairly different than what someone else wants, right? I have people who have sporting dogs, straight field Labrador retrievers are difficult dogs to live with, right? Yeah. The hunt test dogs are a lot easier to live with, but even them, they have a lot of go, and you have to be prepared to be able to meet those needs, those biological needs. Yeah. It's the same with Dobermans. It's the same with any working line dog. And there's going to be levels of dilution from that, right? Absolutely. So with Labrador retrievers, you have pet bred, JQ rando bred Labrador retrievers. You have Labrador retrievers bred for color. You have Labrador retrievers bred for the conformation ring. You have Labrador retrievers bred for the hunt test game. You have Labrador retrievers bred for field trials and HRC and all this other stuff, right? So, and you really have to think hard about the kind of Labrador Retriever you want before you
Absolutely.
just go out and randomly buy one, right? Same with Shepherds, same with Dobermans. Health issues. Health is very important to me. Very, very important to me. I lost 2 pointers, both below the age of 10. Crushed me. Absolutely crushed me. When I lost Cotton, I swear to God, I thought my life had ended, and it took me quite a few years to recover from that, right? Zwei, same thing. When I lost Vi, I swore to God I'd never have another pointer, and here I am.
Yeah.
But basically, it's like it when the things that you can avoid are as easy as a genetic test, why are we not requiring breeders to do this more?
Well, they have to self-police, and you know how that goes. It's probably not a whole lot different than trainers self-policing. Everybody's going to make exceptions for themselves,
right? And the unfortunate reality is the other side of that coin, which is one thing that just disturbs the crap out of me, is the fact that and I know that there's going to be people out there that disagree with me, and that's fine. But the whole insurance reporting, right? And they're alleging that dogs that are healthier are mixed bred dogs, doodles. Okay. But here's the thing: the only people reporting to insurance companies are people who are requiring payments on claims.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that kind of dubious at the same time. I don't think it's an honest representation, because I'll be honest with you, Cotton was the epitome of health until the day he was diagnosed with osteo.
Mm-hmm. He
was 9.
Yep.
Right? Zwei. The drugs, I personally think that the Apoquel that dog took because of his allergies were what killed him.
I've heard people say that. I've heard people say that there's concerns about that stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, he was on it for like almost 6 years. And I was never told that it was anything other. And then when I found out after he died, after we had to euthanize him because of the cluster seizures, I found out that seizure disorder was one of the things that Apoquel was known for. Yeah. Interesting that was not disclosed until right after he was euthanized, right? So health is very important to me.
Well, you're talking to a Doberman person, and to get into the Doberman longevity database for the DPCA, your dog just has to make its 10th birthday. So all the stuff that you worry about with a lot of the other breeds, it's sort of distilled, because we have such a we have a whole genetic bottleneck, I think, in our breed, and that's a whole other road to go down. But the breeders, the flat coat. Yep. Yeah. So, interesting you said flat coat, and interesting that we're talking about puppies, and interesting that we're talking about, because I saw a dog just the other night, actually, for an evaluation. They're going to be training with me, and they did the embark on her, and she's a flat coat Great Pyrenees cross primarily with a few other things thrown in. And she was born in the custody of the rescue that adopted this dog out to the people who brought her to me. And this dog spent the entire evaluation, and I'm not exaggerating, and I'm hoping that my friend Haley, my friend Hannah, who is a trainer, and friend Haley too, who's a trainer, who is here for the evaluation. She was just hanging out with me, and she was here. I hope she chimes in here somewhere and shows up. This dog, I want somebody to attest to this, never, for more than, I'd say, 3-minute spans, never stopped screaming. I don't mean whining. I mean screaming, desperate, just hyperventilating, screaming. And, I put a kennel lead on her and sat on her for most of the evaluation, screaming. And so I'm getting the history of this dog over her ear piercing, blood curdling, just sounds like a goat being put in a freaking stump grinder. So she was born in the rescue. in the custody of the rescue in a foster home. And on paper, I bet these people, and these are wonderful people, they're going to train, they get it, like they know what they need to do. But the way it sounded, if I saw this on paper, I'd say, oh, I wouldn't. But like me as a pet owner, as JQP would be like, wow, that sounds lovely that this puppy was born in the custody of the rescue and then was raised in this wonderful, just idealized foster home where she ran all day with all the other dogs. So it wasn't just, oh, some dogs were around to sort of give her some structure around dogs. Just ran wild all day with all the other dogs, with a few of her siblings, and then like 15 other dogs, who knows? There was no structure whatsoever. They were never crated. They had a doggy door. And the doggy door is just like, that's the end time sign for me. When anybody says doggy door, I'm like, well, you just said everything you need to say.
And they're the most resistant MFers on the face of the planet. What do you mean I can't use my doggy door? I just said you can't. The problems you have because of your door.
Yeah. There's the dog door is like, that's like up there with the dog stroller for a different reason. But anyways, like the sign of the apocalypse. But they raised all these dogs in this complete like Mad Max Thunderdome sort of, and apparently there weren't any fights that they talked about. So this dog spent the formative period of her youth just doing whatever she wanted, just running crazy. But on paper, to a pet owner who wants to like save a dog, that sounds wonderful. Like what a great upbringing. And that dog, I swear to God, like I'm not making this up. My left ear for like the next 24 hours, man, I couldn't hear out. I used to play in punk bands, and this dog blew out my ear worse than standing next to a drum kit. This dog was outrageously incapable of governing itself for more than like 3 or 4 minutes. Like she would just pass out, and that's when she'd finally like shut up, because she was literally out of oxygen. So I look at that and I think about, when we raise puppies, regardless of whether you're a breeder, because you say you're a dog breeder and you have AKC registered whatevers, or
remember a breeder, the qualification to be a breeder is you own the dam when the puppies are whelped.
And that's it. And that's what a lot of these folks that are doing the rescue thing are unaware, that they are breeding dogs. They're not aborting the litters, they're bringing them up. And ironically, because of, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them have that extreme like anti-breeder rhetoric in their head, just playing on endless loop all the time. They're probably the single least prepared group of people to raise a litter of puppies, because they've alienated themselves from the knowledge. I'm not a breeder, but I've been around so many, excellent breeders that I know from it. And when I hear how these dogs are being brought up, Karen's asking, how did they feel right adopting that out?
Yeah.
Because now it's somebody else's problem, and they can put it on their website that the dog's in a wonderful home now. That's how they feel right. That's how it's not their problem anymore. They can.
That's how they justify all of their adoptions, whether the dog is dangerously aggressive or like that. We're going to get into this too, because there are bad breeders. Breeders of purebred dogs who want to couch their language as being a preservation breeder and all this other stuff, when in fact they're nothing more than glorified puppy mills. But before we talk about that, ultimately one of the things that I found, and this is, I worked in the rescue environment for a long time. I've worked in sheltering. I've been a kennel manager for shelters. I've been a behavior counselor for shelters. I've worked on the floor picking up shit and cleaning up, dog bowls and feeding dogs and, slopping floors and all that stuff. So it doesn't really necessarily mean that I'm against shelters, because I'm not. I think they're a necessary evil. But the bottom line is I'll be honest, and this is going to be really hard to hear, and I'm going to lose a lot of my audience the minute I say this. These puppies that are born in the shelter are better off dropped in a bucket than they are being placed in quote unquote fosters who do not understand the behavioral and emotional requirements of a young dog. And I see a lot of these puppies cleaved from their dam and put in rescue environments where they're being tube fed or dropper fed.
Yeah.
And the only socialization they get is when they're and I've seen whole litters die. Whole litters die because of the inappropriate handling. And it's like, you know, the bottom line is this, is like, you can make it sound like you are doing God's work when in fact you are a malignant narcissist, and the things that you are doing do more damage to these animals than good. And the reason I get to say this is because women like Julia, myself, other trainers here, Andy, I'm sure, Greg, Nate, I don't quite understand what this is, but we're going to go with it. Nate's must be nice to measure yourself based on your intentions instead of outcomes.
Oh, the rescue people, like, you know, I'm assuming this is how I'm in, like, you know, our intentions are that we saved a dog and we placed it in another home, and who cares what happens.
And we're going to talk about that at length. The U.S. Department of Agriculture APHIS rule and the new legislation that's governing the inability for this country to import dogs from other countries because of something that rescues and shelters are specifically responsible for. But this is about breeding, so we're going to keep it to that. Anyways, these dogs are coming into the system, right? Or they're going out of the system into really naive pet homes. The vast majority of all the trainers here, which is most of this audience, Julia and myself, the vast majority of people that we are servicing now are first-time animal owners.
Yep.
Because somewhere from the time I was born, I'm a boomer. Sometime when from the time I was born up until now, there are whole generations of young people growing up without ever owning a pet.
Yep.
And so they have been clubbed into believing that they are doing God's work by going out and adopting or rescuing a dog, and they get in over their heads and don't know what to do. Because these same facilities that are supposed to be doing God's work are burdening them with animals that not only are they can't leave their house because these animals are so bad, but they can't invite people over because they're not allowed to use crates, or they have to be home 24/7, or they have to have a fenced yard, and this dog has to be under lock and key. He doesn't like other dogs. He doesn't like cats. He doesn't like kids. He doesn't like this. He doesn't like that. Put the dog down.
Yeah. It's not a happy dog too. I mean, it's not a happy dog. And
no,
if it's that miserable, if it's one of my mentors who is a German Shepherd breeder of pretty serious reputation, he always used to use the phrase, they're allergic to life, dogs like that. You know, they can't function. And at that point in time, you're not really saving anything, you know, maybe your ego.
You're not.
But one of the things too that I find, you know, when we hear about overpopulation and the justification for all the, you know, pediatric spay and neuter, you know, if you're that into that, then when you pick up these pregnant bitches out behind the, you know, the Piggly Wiggly down in Mississippi, I don't know, can you spay them and abort that litter if you're or are those puppies worth $700 or $800 a piece, you know, once they get born? So there's that aspect too, because like you said, as soon as you've got the bitch and she has her puppies, then you're the breeder. And so if you don't like breeders, don't be one. If you're, you know,
exactly. Well,
if that's what you're bringing. This
is going back some time. Well, the whole USDA APHIS thing, where I know now I can't remember if it's Connecticut. I believe it's Connecticut. Maybe it's Massachusetts. Have actually banned transports coming up from the south and dumping. But there's like a whole portion of the eastern quarter now, the northeastern quarter, where these dogs are no longer allowed because they're coming up with no provenance. There's, you know, their health certificates are fiction. And the fact that there was, and Heather and I both wrote about it like 15 years ago, that basically now, you know, or at that time, there were actually shelters that were allowing pregnancies to occur, or actually certainly not trying very hard to prevent them, because there was such a huge market for small fuzzy white dogs in the affluent Northeast.
Well,
and so these dogs were being trucked up on horse trailers where there was 300 or 400 dogs on a trailer.
Absolutely. I think you can still get them I think Connecticut still does it. I know in New Hampshire, we don't allow the trucks to unload here. So if you want to do that, if you want to like go through the Tinder for pet moms, you know, whatever that, I forget what it's called, Pet Finder. I think I just call it Tinder for pet moms.
Tinder for pet moms is exactly right.
You know, me and my bottle of Chardonnay and my sense of social justice, I'm going to go save something. Sorry, did I say that out loud?
That's fine. You can say what you want here. This is my protected space. Anything goes.
But that's the thing that happens now here is you have to go to, I believe, Maine. You can still do it, and you can do Connecticut. Karen's saying you can do it in Mass, so I didn't know if you could do it in Mass. We just had that hearing. It was a few years back, where there was. I wish I could speak with more authority on this. I'm kind of fuzzy brained right now, but we had a hearing up here in New Hampshire. We had a bill that was saying, you know, maybe we should be testing these dogs for brucellosis that come up.
Yeah,
and
it's a big problem in New Jersey.
I went to the actual hearing. I went there. I was told I couldn't speak because I was working for the rescue at that point in time, and I was admonished by my boss and the most of the board of directors that I would not be able to speak on behalf of the rescue, God forbid. But I will tell you, every person who stood up and said that they didn't want dogs being tested, every single one of them had to do with a shelter or a rescue. Whereas a bunch of breeders showed up and said, and actually a couple of pet stores stood up and said, no, this is a good idea. We should be doing this.
Sure it is.
There was one rescue. There's literally one rescue who stood up and said, I think this is a good idea. The rest of them stood up and were adamant that this is terrible. It's never going to happen. We don't have that problem up here. Gee, why don't we have that problem up here? Could it be that up until now, most of the people who are providing, you know, who are actually breeding dogs and whelping puppies up here actually do test for it because it's just considered the right thing to do. So that was a real eye opener because, you know, I always have these suspicions about the motivation of a lot of these organizations that are anti-breeder.
Yeah.
And then I say, I'm not being fair. I'm stereotyping them like they stereotype, you know, people who are breeders or purebred dog aficionados. No, not at all. I mean, it was just laid out there for everybody to see, and it was really disturbing.
I know a lot of breeders, especially years ago. This is way back when I first started out in dogs. So this is back sometime in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. An entire kennel of sporting dogs in the state of New Jersey was completely decimated. And when it comes to brucellosis, that's a scorched earth policy.
Yep.
Right. So
absolutely. Even though, terrifying.
Yeah, it's on the grounds. It's on the grounds. So a lot of breeders for a very long time actually required that bitches coming in for breeding had to be brucellosis tested. When I had German Shepherd dogs, I had all the bitches that came to one of the stud dogs that I had. Well, all of the stud dogs had to be brucellosis tested, just by virtue of the fact that, you know, it's just like any other STD. How do you think that shit gets passed?
Right.
Right. And it's like, but the thing is, though, I mean, outside of the fact that the puppies are born, if they're born alive, they're born with hardship. Most of them, you know, in cattle, they slip. In cattle, they slip their calves. Horses, they slip their foals. And I know that in the West, where bison are still a huge thing. Thank you, honey. Where bison are still a huge thing, they actually have destroyed entire herds because of the brucellosis. Because that's transmutable to livestock that, you know, people consume. Right. So it's a huge thing. And, you know, the whole USDA APHIS thing, and I was on those stakeholder calls with, do you remember Tina Paraguay?
Yeah. What? Yeah, I do remember.
She passed away quite a few years ago, but
I remember her name.
Very adamant about that. And as a result of her involvement, I was actually able to get on some of those stakeholder calls with the United States Department of Agriculture and the FDA and sit down and talk about some of this stuff. Guess who was exempt from the APHIS rule?
Oh, I don't know. Surprise me.
Shelters and rescues, right?
Okay.
So right after that, this is 12 or 13 years ago, right after that, you started seeing an incline of all of these importations of dogs from other countries. Because we couldn't satisfy the need in this country through people who wanted cheap dogs through rescues and shelters, which have now turned to be fairly expensive dogs, because when you want to adopt a purebred, you're paying anywhere from $600 on up. At least in this.
Yeah, 600 is up here where I am. 600 is short money. There was a breed rescue up here that I won't specify, but they were doing all of the rescues from China, and they were selling those dogs. If you wanted something that was 1 to 3 years old, you were paying over $1,000. I believe it was 1,800. 1,800, and you know, and are they healthy dogs?
Health records.
Probably not.
Dubious temperament. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and I wrote about this a long time ago, and I said, the guy that like basically stole your money from you, he's just counting your money in Mandarin, just like the guy down in the Lancaster Pick-a-Pup, in Amish country is doing it in Pennsylvania Dutch. It's the same thing. It's the same scam. And meanwhile, if you happen to have a litter of well-bred dogs that you actually did test the parents, test the litter, everything else, and you actually require, some kind of responsibility in the upbringing, you're a bad person. You're a breeder. And again, I know we're going to talk about, there are some pretty horrible breeders. We all know them, at various degrees, but you can't, that they're good eating now. You can't discount the hypocrisy here.
No, you can't. And because the shelters and the rescues have a huge lobby, right?
They do.
ASPCA, Humane Society of the United States, all these fucktards. And basically, it's like people don't stop to think about, following the money, when in fact the vast majority of their donations go to lining people's pockets. Neither of those institutions actually do anything outside of, I think, what is it, like maybe 3% of every dollar goes to actually rescuing and sheltering
single digits. And
the rest of it goes to all this grandiose advertising and hiring, internationally recognized talent and marketing and all this other BS, and making T-shirts that other people get paid to, that other people get paid once the T-shirts are sold, because that's what it is. You're not donating shit. You're buying merchandise. Right. And it's like, and this is the thing that really irritates me, is if you go deep enough down that rabbit hole, and the Sportsmen's Alliance is great for this, because that's where the battle is being fought right now. Is the Sportsmen's Alliance has actually brought suit against the federal government about this law for limiting the ability for people in this country to import dogs from other countries. The one rule, and I find it interesting, the one rule that is so overarching over all of it is the fact that dogs must be older than 6 months old. Now, I know for a fact that is the divine province of the rescues and the shelters who push for that, because it forces people to purchase here in this country. There's not enough breeders to satisfy that requirement for dogs. And where are we going to go for the bloodlines? Where are we going to go? I had 2 dogs picked out.
Remember you said this. Yep.
I could get neither of them because the one litter was not going to be born until close to August 1st. And the breeder was not going to hold on to a dog for me for 6 months. That's ludicrous. So that put too much of a burden on her. And essentially the other dog, same thing. I wasn't going to be able to get that dog for primarily the same reasons. The additional expense, and it used to be that you could fly, and I had a friend of mine actually did this. She got a Tornyak. She flew to Croatia, picked up the puppy at the airport, turned around and got on another flight back to the United States in the same day.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So that the puppy could fly in the cabin with her.
Yeah.
Right? There's absolutely no reason. None of those dogs are coming over to this country with rabies. None of them.
Of course not.
Because they have to actually have the same certification requirements that we have. And basically it's like for them to the United States essentially just cut off their own Department of Defense, the military, police forces, and things like that, people who actually require these dogs. A lot of them bring them over, pregnant bitches, which I don't know if that's impacted or not. I would think that it probably would be, but people who prospect and buy young dogs, right, or bring a whole bunch of puppies over, if they work out great, we grow them out and sell them. If they don't, what are we going to do with these dogs now? So it puts an additional burden. And I've talked about this before, and someone was arguing with me. But the bottom line is again, when you talk about preservation breeders, we're talking about people who are actually concerned with a dog's ability to perform a task that it was bred for. Nate and Gretchen are some of those people, and they follow some very rigorous rules regarding the breed club that governs their breed and the things that they have to do in order to be able to accomplish the things that they're able to do in this country. That's a very limited gene pool here.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for them to be able to continue maintaining good, viable, healthy lines when they can't import dogs from other countries. And they have some nice dogs. And I think now one of the bitches is eligible to be bred using AI because she's had a live litter. I think that's one of the requirements. And essentially, but that's a huge burden to put on people in this country when you suck. I hate you. I hate you. You suck. My husband's over here eating delicious food.
Oh.
But anyways, it's unfortunate. But the thing is, though, is again, the uptick in, double rainbow. No, that's the comment. My husband took a picture of the comment. I'll be stealing the photograph and posting it later.
Very cool.
But basically, in that, that brings us to the other portion of this is there are, as Julie has stated multiple times, there are people who call themselves breeders thinking that they're, again, doing God's work. And what they're doing is just an abysmal job of just slapping two dogs together and hoping for a good outcome. We all know the doodle breeders, right? These designer dogs that I'm not even going to call them breeds because they're not. Eventually they will be. Right. According to the AKC, if you breed for 3 generations true, then you're a purebred dog. So that's kind of what they're hoping for. And at this point in time, I'll be honest with you, I think my new dog should be a thing. Right? Yeah. I do. I think my new dog should be a thing.
There you go.
I have a friend of mine who is helping place a litter, and you guys have seen me post it on both my business page and my personal page, a lovely litter of hard line working pointing breeds that accidentally got together and decided that they wanted to have a little tryst. And there was a fantastic litter born, of which half of them look like short hairs and half of them look like pointers. Because there's commonalities in both breeds. The land races that goes both of those, short hairs are basically just a newer version of the pointer, right? Pointers improve every breed as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, so here we have this lovely liver bitch, looks just like a short hair. And then these two lovely liver and white males that the tails were kept. And they look like English pointers. They look like fieldbred pointers. And they're lovely dogs.
I saw the video of them. They're really cool. Like they're look
nice.
Like,
they're nice. If I had not had this other plan, I would have one.
I was wondering when you said something about a puppy, I was like, I thought it might be one of those. So
yeah, and the thing is, I would very much. Spider is enough for me right now as far as the hunting dogs go. He's enough, and he's actually with the trainer because he is more equipped. And these guys, that litter that I was showing, are, Spider's a wonderful dog. Don't get me wrong. But he's mostly showbred. He does have a lot of field, like hunt test stuff in his pedigree. But these dogs are hunting dogs. Yeah. These dogs are hunting dogs. I'm just not that girl anymore. I would not do those dogs justice. And they need to go to homes who are going to appreciate the fact that these are what they do. Yeah. The only unfortunate reality is they're not purebred. So people are like, they're stuck on this mindset that they have to be purebred. No, they don't. They don't have to be purebred. They can be anything. Right now, one of the most popular breeds in the UK is a breed called Sprockers. They're half Springer and half Cocker. And they are dynamite little working dogs. They weigh about maybe 20 pounds tops. They're bringing in
cool,
geese,
actually. Yeah.
Upland birds. They're bringing in rabbits, and they're just, Johnny on the go all the time. I would not mind having one of those dogs, but not at this age. And, it would be wasted on me, and I wouldn't do that to a dog. Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what this is.
What you got?
We're keeping fingers crossed that Hula and Gala get around that. We are damn lucky that our Iberian breeder.
Probably the CDC.
Oh, these guys until we get them. Oh, so you have dogs coming from overseas that are 6 months or older. Lucky you. You can't. I don't know what's a gen. Hold on a sec. Hold on. I'm getting lost here. All right. Why can't a Gen 1? I'm imagining that's an Iberian hound from country of origin be registered. Right. And yeah, exactly. It used to be, well, they were all spaniels because they were all field spaniels. And then they became offshoots of the field spaniel. So it was field spaniel and then cocker spaniel and then all these other different spaniels. And it's just like basically they're all the same breed. But yeah, the big popular one right now in the UK is Springers bred to cockers. The field Springers.
My favorite doodle mix. My favorite doodle I can't believe I just said those words together. Favorite doodle. But anyway, my favorite doodle. My favorite one that I've ever worked with was a Springer doodle. It's the only one I've ever seen. She was awesome. She was a terrific dog. I did a board and train with her last year. She was compact. She was really cool looking. She was a neat looking little dog. She wasn't like overdone with like a crazy coat or anything. She had kind of a more poodly looking coat. Super smart, really biddable, unflappable, lovely temperament, just great dog. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I get that. But then how often do you see that? But it was a Springer doodle. It's the only one I've ever seen. I've seen them.
I've never even heard of that, and I'm glad.
Yeah, it's random, but she's a super nice dog. And, I kept saying that when I had her. I was like, this is one I could see owning because she's fun and she's got a good brain. And she was kind of like a do-anything dog, but that is the one and only that I've ever even heard of. So, they just, you get overrun with all the Labras and Golden and Burn. The big one now is Burn.
The only ones that I've ever liked have been Labradoodles. Two of them actually come to mind. One was a dog I would have made room for and almost did, but that ended up going, well. But he was a nice dog. He was a very nice dog.
No, they're out there.
They're out there, but they're so rare. And people who are like, I can't stand the temperaments for the vast majority of these dogs. They're super nervy. They're either super sharp or just they don't find the appeal, right?
Same. It's funny you said sharp because I've seen a lot of them that the adjective that I always use when I'm describing them is they're dull. Like, so yes, I've seen the sharp ones, but just some of them, they just seem to be kind of shuffling through life. And
they're very generic.
Yeah. And I suppose that's sort of the appeal for a lot of people, but I just don't get it. But I guess that's kind of what they're selling them as is.
Well, and the thing is, though, when you're talking about people like you and me, Heather, several other people that are on here that actually need dogs that, we have a requirement for the dogs that live with us. That goes beyond being a freaking lint catcher, right? Or lint maker. And I have had plenty of those, and they've been wonderful dogs, but they also still served some meaningful purpose. But the thing is, though, is the vast majority of people, and they've been sold this bill of goods, which is really, really depressing for me, that these dogs don't require care, that they don't require grooming, that they don't require training, they're perfect and all this other stuff. And naive people, first-time pet owners, are being duped into purchasing these animals for large sums of money to come to find out that none of that stuff is true. Right. And it's the internet, and it's I don't think that it's as bad as it used to be. when the internet was new, and the very first thing that got populated besides porn is dogs.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I love Heather. How does the average intelligent retriever plus very smart poodle becomes a bag of hammers? Yet here we are. Because they're both retrievers. So we go back to that whole land race thing. And that's where that comes from, I guess. I don't know. I think it depends on the retriever, because most of my field stuff has been very, very keen. Your average pet bred or showbred retriever, no offense to the showbred retriever people out there, but they're not the sharpest knives in the drawer. They're just not. But basically, same thing. These people are being told that these dogs are wonderful, and then they get upset when they find out none of that stuff is true. Yeah. The internet's a thing. It is. How can you not go online? And this is a perfect segue for our next portion, is the fact, how do you identify a good breeder from a bad breeder, right? The internet is a thing. It is an absolute constant. It's never going away. This is the most powerful tool anyone can own if you know how to use it. And the thing that really disturbs me is people don't use it anymore. They want someone else to give them the information. They don't want to have to do the work.
Yep.
And when you're looking for a dog, go below the fold on the first page of Google search, right? Mm-hmm. Or use Tor, or use what's the other one that isn't a Google product that you can actually do clean searches on, that are going to render results that have nothing to do with Google. Because Google wants to sell you stuff. Google wants to sell advertising to people who need advertising. And those people spend a lot of money there, right? So if I'm going to Google a German Shepherd breeder, I'm going to come up with a whole shit ton of search results that I don't want. It's either going to be, my dogs are the hardest working, my dogs are super talented working dogs, and they're that crappy Highline West German stuff, or they're these super high tests, what was traditionally the Eastern Bloc countries, DDR dogs and stuff like that, or they're the showline dogs. How do you siphon through that stuff? Right? How do you I'm sorry.
I was going to say, with the shepherd, just using the shepherds as an example, I feel like a lot of people are attracted to the, and I know some people who breed the decent highline dogs and bring them over and stuff. But I think that's the thing, people go on looks. They really do. And they want that, confirmation bias. Well, that's a beautiful dog. Oh, look, and it says right here that, he's great with kids, and they're making puppies with him. And it's simple as that. I think for so many people, it's just going to be that sort of aesthetic. Like he looks like. It's happening with the Dobermans, with the Euro, these big hyper type dogs. And it used to be that, you'd say European, and you were talking about old German lines and, some of the other stuff that, contributed to the working dogs over here. But now that's like, if you do a search for Doberman breeders, you see these things they're Molossers. They look like Great Danes.
Yeah, they're hideous.
And they have nothing to do with what the dog is supposed to be, what the breed is supposed to be. But I routinely get people, because we see such a high number of Dobermans just based on my history. I see so many people who say, oh yeah, we got this dog from this excellent breeder. He's a Euro, which is a thing now. It's like back in the 80s. He's a King Doberman. He's a Warlock. It's the same shit. And it's just, and it is, a lot of it is shit. But I think that's part of it is, there's a market for that. I had somebody ask me about breeding fox who doesn't health test their dogs because the parents didn't have whatever. It's not even that the parents were health tested. And Dobermans are just, they're like 31 flavors of effed up with health, Yeah. And so when you have breeders of my breed in particular saying, well, the embark test says that they don't have DCM. Well, that's junk. That doesn't mean anything. The parents didn't have it. So we don't help to, they don't have it. We don't test because, well, the parents were okay. Oh, did you test the parents? No, but their parents were okay. And a person who, I'm sure is a very nice person who loves the breed very much. I got it third hand. Oh, they're interested in your dog. And I was like, well, I'm not even breeding my dog. That's the thing. He's not even out there because I don't feel like I know enough. I'll wait until somebody that's got a dog that's health tested out the wazoo, who understands the lines and who understands what dog would complement him. I'll wait for that person to approach me. But the person who did second, third hand approach me about breeding my dog, I'm sure they think that they're making excellent dogs, and maybe they are temperament wise. I don't know. But those people are selling puppies for $15, $18, $2,000, which is less than what you pay for a working dog or a showline dog. And so those dogs are out there in the population, and hopefully they're all temperamentally sound. But that person probably qualifies as a good breeder to JQP. Oh yeah, family raised. Yeah.
Yeah, family that's a huge thing.
Point. Yeah.
Family raised, yeah, by like the family. I'm trying to send an invitation to somebody, and I'm not having any luck. All right, so I've sent the invitation. Hopefully, we'll be joined shortly. But yeah, and I there's so many breeds now. And I started out in this back in the early 70s, and there's so many breeds now that are just overwhelmed with insidious diseases. And there are people who are just so they don't care. And it's like, there's like, I started out in Irish setters. The only thing that used to affect Irish setters back in the day was PRA, progressive retinal atrophy. Mm-hmm. Now they have HOD, now they have PRA, now they have, DM. They have all these different things. They have heart, issues, and they've just turned into a genetic cesspool. And it's like, I can't anymore. I just can't. Yeah. And when I was looking at these puppies yesterday, she asked me, why do you want one of these? And I said, because I'm tired of purebreds. I'm done. I can't, I Spider, long-lived. Heather's dogs, obviously long-lived. I don't have, they're pointers used to not have the health problems that they have, but I can't trust that that's not going to occur again, right? So although I love the breed and I like having them around, I can't invest anymore in something that may have dubious issues. So I'm going to take a chance on a dog whose parents I know are health tested, right? Their parents, the sire and dam of this litter, although on some things they were too young to be health tested, both sets of their parents have been health tested because they were in performance pursuits and had to be. Right. Exactly. So it's just like Delmar Smith. He said, if you have a well-bred litter, there's no reason you can't stick your hand in the whelping box and pull out a likely candidate. Right. And I believe that. I mean, this woman comes highly recommended. Everybody I know that knows her says so. And I looked at her stuff. I've looked at her dogs. I've seen her personal working career. I'm like, I'm just as good off doing that as spending $5,000 or $6,000 on a candidate from wherever, right? So the thing that really kind of bothers me, right? The thing that kind of bothers me is the fact that, the one service that I offer that I think in all of the years that I've been doing business, I've only had one person or maybe two people actually take me up on it, was helping them locate a dog. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I go through a whole litany of things when I ask people to seriously consider why they want a dog. And I mean, we really drill down on things like, how much tolerance do you have for grooming? How much tolerance do you have for barking? How much tolerance do you have for the difficulty you're going to experience when it comes to housebreaking this dog? Because let's face it, there are breeds of dogs that are more difficult to housebreak than others, right? Especially as puppies, Shih Tzus, Beagles. There's a whole bunch of other small breeds of dogs that are notoriously difficult to housebreak. There are some large breeds of dogs that are notoriously difficult to housebreak. And we're not talking about little tiny puddles. We're talking seas of urine, like on your, $90,000 Persian rug. But people don't want to go through that. It's like you said earlier, that people are more influenced by the look of a dog than they are anything else. And then when they get that dog, all of a sudden they realize, oh my God, this is so what I did not want to have. And it's like, none of my dogs are ugly. None of my dogs are ugly.
That's
I couldn't.
right, yeah.
I got to wake up next to that. I want it to look good. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm anal retentive that way. All of my dogs are handsome animals, but
Mm-hmm.
by the same token, all of my dogs, they're not going to fall over and die from some insidious disease tomorrow either, right? When you look for a breeder, what are you looking for? I'm looking for honesty. How do you determine honesty? Where do you find someone who is honest? What are your sources?
Basically, if that's if I'm looking for a breeder, I guess the first thing I want to see is that they're doing, everything that you just said with the health testing in particular in my breed. If they're not health testing, I don't want anything to do with them. The OFA will allow you to, you can list less than ideal results on your tests. My dog just had his yearly echocardiogram done, and it was good. But I checked the box that gives the OFA permission to publish the results if they're not good. And so I think that's like one of the most blatant examples of honesty in a breeder is if they will say, yes, we have this on this side of the family, or if you go back a couple generations, you'll see we had some of this, but we tried to complement it with bringing, this other thing in. I feel like that's a thing that I tell people to look for is if they're just telling you how wonderful their dogs are across the board and promising you something that, it's not possible. When I talk to a breeder, I had a conversation with somebody who breeds Dobermans a number of years ago. And all I wanted to do was just take a look at a pedigree. And it was on behalf of a student of mine who was looking. And I couldn't get them to show me the pedigree. And I thought that was amazing. And I said, I just want to look back. And the person was like, well, the parents. And then I'm like, yeah, but I don't know the pedigrees that well. I'm not one of those scholars. I need to actually look at it because I know what my student's looking for. And I also want to make sure that the dog is healthy. And they were just 100% not going to show me the pedigree. And it's like, you're going to sell the puppy. And if my student buys the puppy, I'm going to see the pedigree. And then what? He's not going to return the puppy at that point because he's going to love the puppy. But
Yep.
I found, you asked me what I look for. That's what I wouldn't look for. Because you're not going to even show me a piece of paper. I mean, when I try to coach my students up, and like you said, by the time we see these people, the barn door has been closed. The horse is already out. But I do ask them, to look into if it's a particular breed that they're interested in. Don't read the TFH book and say that you researched the breed.
Right.
Dig in. What is your dog most likely to die from? What is your dog most likely to be sick from? What is your dog most likely going to have as a temperament deficit that you might not like? Find that stuff out first. And when you find that stuff out, those are the questions you need to ask your breeder. What are you testing for? What about the parents? What did the granddad die of? I mean, these are the things that I don't think pet owners even begin to think of. I think
they don't, which is unfortunate. Where do you think most pet owners go for their information?
Well, they just go online,
or they go to their vet.
Oh yeah, well yeah, and we know how that works out.
Right, or they go to their friends. They like, oh, that's a really cool looking dog. Where did you get it?
Where'd you get it? Right.
Right, and I actually a couple of years ago, I had a litany of people that actually, one client had purchased this dog from a resource that's fairly close to us, and then their entire family was so enamored of that dog that they all went out and got one. Mm-hmm. And predictably, those results were not the same across the board, right?
Right.
I tell people all the time, it's like, if you're not going to take my advice, then I want you to contact the person who still grooms dogs that isn't working for a box store. I want a professional groomer that's got their own shop. I want you to talk to any trainer you want to talk to, as long as they've had more than about 20 years experience. And I want you to talk to boarding kennel owners, not these shit sticks who have these fucking dog daycare, open cage free bullshit right? I want people who actually know dogs. And I want you to ask them to list the top 5 dogs, the top 5 breeds of dogs that they have that satisfy all of those size requirements that you have, all of those grooming requirements that you have, and all of those other temperament requirements that you have. The person asking, and you're going to come up with at least 1 or 2 dogs that fit all of those criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And they're surprised. And I'm like, I don't want to sell you a dog. You go on the websites of all these breeders, and they're going to sit there and give you a line of shit because they want to sell you a dog. Right. I'm going to be hard pressed to go. I'm going to find a breeder that doesn't want to sell me a dog. One of the first German Shepherds I ever owned was from a woman who refused to sell her to me until she was almost a year old.
Wow.
And I'm like, I got to have that dog. I got to have that dog. And she's like, you don't want that dog. I'm like, I want that dog. I want that dog right there. That dog that you're keeping, I want that dog.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me almost until the dog was almost a year old. I mean, I saw her, I held her wet in my hand. And I'm like, I want that dog.
Wow. Wow.
And she's like, you don't want that dog. Because she was mismarked and this and that, whatever. And I'm like, I don't care. I want that dog. I saw her when she was about like 4 or 5 months old. And I was just like, oh my God, I have to have that dog. She's like, you can't have her. I would literally beg this woman to let me buy that dog. And she didn't until she was almost a year old. And then I had her and she was mine. Never regretted it. Never regretted the wait. Never regretted any of it. And she lived a nice long life and gave me, just the most joy I'd ever had with a dog.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But basically, Peter actually met her. But anyways, be that as it may, it's like I trust. That's a good one. You're right, Heather. What breeds would you never own?
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah.
Right. And it's like there's a lot of breeds that I wouldn't own. There was a question not too long ago on one of the social media sites about the types of the breeds of dogs that you would never own. And mine are easy. No breaky breeds, no giant breeds, no hairless breeds. None of the breeds that are inclined to any huge genetic anomalies. I also, and no offense to you, or people who own dogs that need to be doctor cropped, I would not refuse a dog who had already been doctor cropped, but I would never own a dog where that was a requirement of myself. Right. So, and the thing is that I love Dobermans. I think they're the most majestic creatures on the face of the planet. I would not own one because I couldn't do that. And it's not for any other reason outside of the fact that, I'm not a humaniac. Y'all know that, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just that I find it unnecessary. And I don't like Dobermans that haven't been doctor cropped. I think they're ugly.
Yeah.
I think they're horrifying.
I'm getting used to them. I'm starting to get used to them, but I'll tell you, and the health thing too. The Dobermans tick that health box too, because unfortunately that's a reality in our breed right now. And you hear the stories about dogs that have been health tested dropping dead when they're 3. It's terrible. Yeah. And then you see them live until they're 15. And it's such a crapshoot right now that I tell people all the time, I wish I wasn't so into them because they will break your heart. But yeah, so I'm with you on the giant, the giant breeds. No, thank you. I could never. I see people with Danes. I see people with the Wolfhounds. I've seen a few of those over the years, and it's like I don't understand. Like I get it. Like people love them, but when I see just regular pet folks who own, we have some students, and I think they have 2 or 3 right now that my business partner has had them as students over the years. I think they have either 2 or 3 Danes, and like I kind of get it, but I also it would be so much to live around, and they have so many health issues. I don't ever see myself owning. I'm just not a huge fan of the American Bulldogs these days. Not a huge fan, and they can be really impressive looking. And I've met some that are delightful, but they're very few and far between. And I've known enough of them now that, like, if somebody wanted to give me one, I couldn't do it. So, the giant breeds are one of that's always on the top of my mind. If we're asking about like what breeds would I not own personally, I couldn't go through between the health and just the living your life around your dog. No thanks. But anything with a coat too. Like I always say someday I want to get a poodle, like a standard poodle, and then I know myself. I'm like, you have Dobermans, you Simonize them once every few months, you're all set. I can't imagine.
Exactly. It's like my 2 English Shepherds are the most grooming I ever want to do. I started out in hair breeds. I started out in Irish Setters.
Right.
When I was grooming dogs, I was grooming sporting breeds. I was grooming hair breeds. I didn't do poodles, but I was doing terriers. I was doing Afghans. I was doing collies. I was doing, all of the sporting dogs with coat. And I'm just like, when I finally got rid of my last Irish Setter, I'm like, I ain't doing this no more. Because I shot over my dogs. So you'd come back from the field and you were picking burrs out of dogs that were going to be in the ring the next weekend. And it's like, no, I'm done with that. I taught a really good friend of mine how to groom Afghans 1,000 years ago. And I used to prepare Afghans for the ring. I used to go, and I'm just like, I'm done with hair. I had German Shepherds. And it's like, although the hair is short, it's just like, the one picture I posted on my Facebook page today with all the blonde tufts of hair, that was Rooster, right? Yeah. That's a day with that dog. And he's got more coat. It's so profuse and thick. And just, it's been like 50 degrees here, 55 degrees. And today it was 80. And this dog was miserable, panting like he was dying because his coat was so heavy. And I'm pulling coat out of this dog. And I'm just like, God, would this just end? Just stop shedding, for God's sake.
Had a couple of Shepherds, and it was like that. The last Shepherd I had, he was massive. He was this big sable dog. He was magnificent. But my life was just covered in his fur, his hair everywhere. And that just, it sticks to everything. And it sounds petty because he was a wonderful dog, but I just couldn't. I
don't have Shepherds anymore as a result, right? And these guys, Pearl, God bless her. Yes, I'm looking at you, girl. Her coat's bad enough. She sheds predictably, right? Mm-hmm. But Rooster, big, intact male, profusely coated. And it's just like, if I swept my floor 5 times a day, I'd still be picking up Rooster hair.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, I dearly love that dog. I do. But I swear to God, if I had a mind, I would shave it bald headed. Right. Not really, but I would there's days like today where I dream of it because, oh my God. But this time of year is super bad, but there's, to answer Greg's question, what breeds would I like to own but have it? I have owned every breed I have wanted to own. The only thing now that I would probably want to own would be some type of broken coated terrier, like a Norwich or a Norfolk, but they are such a genetic cesspool. Nope, not even going there.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. I've had my sporting dogs. I've had my herding dogs. Those are the two groups that I've always had dogs out of. I've had dogs from the working group. I've had dogs from the non-sporting group. I've had terriers. If I had no dogs at all, I would probably get another bull terrier. But then again, I don't want to dick with that health. I just don't want to do it.
Right. I've thought about. I theoretically like the idea of a bull terrier because I had a friend who bred them, and I was around them a lot. And I love so much about them. They're just such idiots, and they're just great.
They are. They're dummies.
But then, what would I do with that dog? Like you said, I have a house full of dogs. So what would I do with that dog? But I still on a level sort of love them.
I can admire them from afar.
Exactly. I've thought about the standard poodle thing, but the coat blows my mind. I couldn't hack it. I've always I've met a couple of very, very nice min pins, oddly enough, and in German pinchers. I trained a couple of German pinchers over the years that made me really, really like them. And I've met a couple of very good min pins. I've met way more crappy ones, but the good ones made me go, yeah, I can see, because a lot of Doberman people end up with one. And I've looked at them and gone, oh, I could maybe do that. But then I just, I'm hanging on to my last shred of sanity as it is. So, but those, I'm very, those are all very similar, the min pins, the German pinchers. I'm intrigued by them.
I've handled a couple of them. Man, they're a lot of dog.
They are a lot of dog. I like them. I could see it. I could see having one, but man, if you get the wrong one, that's a rough ride if you get the wrong one. So yeah, I'm just getting very monolithic now and just staying with my Dobermans. So
yeah, same here. I'll be honest with you. I'm sticking with the dogs that I have. Spider is probably, I'm fairly certain he is my last pointer. These guys, my English Shepherds, I could probably have my arm twisted to get another one of those. But I'm like right now, I'm sticking with the new girl that I got. She looks like a reasonable representation of Pearl's successor. There is no replacing this dog. I don't know what's going to happen to me after, if God forbid anything happens to her. But I have found out with the mistakes that I made when I lost Zvi that another pointer was not the way to go. And with this dog, there is no replacing that with another English Shepherd. I need something different so that I'm not constantly comparing them, which is one of the reasons that Rooster and I came to the conclusion when he was fairly young. It's not that he doesn't like me. He prefers Peter. So he's Peter's dog. And I don't interfere with that. I mean, he has to do what I tell him to do. And he's a great companion, but he's not my dog, right? Yeah. This dog is my dog. I want to make any successive dog my dog. And everyone here knows what I'm talking about when I say that. But for the most part, I don't really, I don't have any desire to go exploring other breeds, just like you. I'm fairly monolithic. I want, there's a very specific flavor to the type of dog that I like. And I think I'll stick with that. It's been successful for me for the last 40 some years. So I don't think I'm going to change anytime soon.
Right.
So, but yeah, with breeders, I know I invited Heather to join us. I don't know if she's gotten a link or what, or maybe she just doesn't want to join us, but she's got some great feedback about breeder websites. And I think they're worth actually listening to because there's a lot of value there, and also a lot of humor, because we know that Heather is she's a very witty person. But be that as it may, one of the things that stands out to me, because I have people that send me websites all the time. It's like, what do you think of this? And it's like, I wouldn't buy it from there if they were the last breeder on the face of the planet. And they're like, well, why? What do you see? And it's like, because everything is all about me. Right? They're like, our dogs are health tested. Well, show me.
Right.
What is the number? Show me the links where I can see that this has actually occurred. Right. And it's like all the pictures are of dogs who are, super extreme close-ups with these fearful little things on little red velvet pillows, when what you can't see is the debris and all the garbage that's on the other sides of that close-up frame. Or it's like, okay, so you drug these dogs out of the little, chicken coop they were born in, and then you put them on this pillow and they're terrified. They look like they're going to die. Or every video that you see is of a dog laying down, right? If you're telling me that you have working lines, I want to see your work. I want to.
Oh, of course.
All right, hold on a sec. Let me try this again. Copy messenger. Oops.
Well, while you're doing that, you're talking about the when you say, the people who say they have the working dogs, but they can't show you work. There's an opposite thing that I've been seeing a lot, particularly with German Shepherds around here, where some of the people who are coming in here have these pretty serious German Shepherds that have no business living in pet homes, but they're 100% working line dogs that have a great deal of suspicion, some dog aggression sometimes. They're not particularly forgiving of their handlers. And I'm seeing them in like what are basically pet homes. And I'm always surprised because some of these breeders are people who I think are fairly respectable breeders. And I guess, do you leave room for the people who are purchasing puppies who misrepresent themselves and their abilities and their intentions? Because I know that I've seen some of the dogs it varies, but I've seen a couple of dogs. It really does seem to be German Shepherds in my neck of the woods right now, or at least here right now at my place, where I've seen these dogs who are pretty serious dogs coming from people who do actively compete in sports with their dogs, who do actually do protection with their dogs. And they're placing them into homes where they're expected to be, family pets. And I'm not sure what the disconnect is. I guess, does the breeder just want to hammer the check? But I would be worried that that would come back literally and figuratively to bite me in the ass if I'm putting these sort of hard dogs in soft homes.
There she is.
Well, there she is.
Yes.
What up?
Hi, Heather.
I'm trying to make things work on a phone because it takes forever to get a computer up here.
Well, we were talking. I don't know if you heard, but we were talking about some of the great comments that you have made about websites, people who are breeding dogs. And one of the things that we're talking about is, when you're trying to select a breeder, and the vast majority of people are searching for, they're searching on the web. So, and everyone knows that you never go to a dog breeder website to look at puppies because they're going to sit there and try and sell you a dog. Their interest isn't to part you from your money. It's not necessarily to provide you with facts about their bloodlines, about what they actually do. And you've come across some great ones. So let us have it.
Well, we could talk about Shady Lane Kennels, which she kind of what's the word? It was right there in the name, right?
Shady Kennels.
Shady Lane Kennels. Yes. So that was the Montana Puppy Miller, and she had a beautiful website.
Mm.
She had a gorgeous website. It was all stock images.
Yeah.
She lived in a pile of shit, broken cars, and dead dogs. That is how it was. And of course, that was all of 2009 involved in that hoarder breeder rescue.
Yep.
I don't think most buyers even go to a breeder website. They go to, puppyfind.com.
Right.
And it says, hey, all our breeders are certified, licensed, whatever nonsense word they're using there.
USDA license.
Well, there's that Greenfield Pups.
Greenfield
you guys
Pups,
have seen that? Yeah, that's a big one. We see a lot of dogs from there, and it's just a brokerage for Amish people. Like it's just all these like Amish, like production mills basically.
Yep, there's like 5 surnames among Old Order Amish, and
yep.
If your dog's breeder has one of those,
Yoder.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Stoltzfus, Yoder.
Stoltzfus,
exactly.
Oh my God.
Miller.
Yeah. And look, a lot of Amish are puppy millers. A lot of them are not, and
right.
Puppy millers are not Amish. In our breed, we have what I call Miller Light, which is, they got 3 breeding bitches. They do 5 litters a year.
Mm-hmm.
They have 1 stud dog that's on site. Maybe those dogs get out and run around the homestead with the 7 million kids in their gingham cosplay. Maybe they don't. But it's it's pin money. It's
right.
It's these women, and a lot of time it's it's religious nuts. These women who don't work outside the home because they're
right.
pounding out children and canning peaches, and they make money on puppies. And unfortunately, they know how to market. They really do. They know how to play that. Mm-hmm. And you guys know Carol Gravestock?
Yes.
Okay, so French Bulldog breeder. Like, what dog would I never own, right?
Oh, there you go. How did we miss that one?
Carol is outstanding. And she's the one that gave me if you see a Jesus fish on the breeder website,
stay away.
Yeah, well, that's the sign that there's a rabbit hutch of starving puppies back behind the garage, right?
Yeah.
And I've never found that not to be true, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
She's also the one that that referred to the dead dog clause in what looks like a good puppy contract. So that's the one where, oh yes, we have a health guarantee.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
you have to do is return your sick puppy that you've had for 6 months.
Right.
Or 6 days. It doesn't matter with most people. And you know, we'll take it back and issue you its brother.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And
Here's another one just like it.
nobody's going to do that because they know what's going to happen to the sick puppy they return. And monsters, they're pet owners.
Yeah.
So
And that's a big thing. It's good. I'm glad that you brought that up because there's a lot of people like, you know, and they'll guilt you. Well, if you just bring it back, we're just going to put it down.
Yeah,
And stuff like that. It's like, you know, okay, that's fine, but you ripped me off, and small claims court's going to have a field day with this.
Yeah.
And you know, and the Heather's contract is fairly thorough. I've had to sign it twice. And basically, it's like, you know, the bottom line is that's the kind I can respect that, because in a situation where someone gets into a bind, the breeder should be the very first phone call you make.
Absolutely.
And all these breeders, and I know some people who produce, you know, in their venues, some very top tier dogs who are like, I am not taking that dog back for love or money. And when you question them why, it's like, because I didn't make the mistakes after the dog was sold. But you have some form of obligation to that which you created, even if it means you take it back and put it down because its behavior is so onerous, you can't home that dog. You at least have to make that attempt. And if you're not willing to, then that's not necessarily an animal, because if you can't stand behind it, then I don't really think that I feel comfortable either.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if in the breeder's contract they oblige themselves to take back the dog, that means that they are going to be that much more careful about what they're producing and how they're placing it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because I don't want to take back the dog. I've had to do it twice. And one had a superb outcome because I got him in time. And one had a tragic outcome because I got back a broken animal.
Yeah.
You know, and that was from my first litter. I do not want to take that dog back. So I'm going to be really careful about where they go. And I'm going to make sure that that dog is suitable to be out there, you know, in the community where he is.
And that's important. And I think that it's necessary for people who are actively looking for a dog to be aware of that. It's like, you know, people like us, we know what we're getting into when we get a dog and bring it home. So we already have contingencies in place if that should not work out, which is unlikely. I'm not going to go and get a dog I don't think I can live with for the rest of its life, right? I'm not one to get dogs and place them. I don't believe either of you are either, and most of the people of my acquaintance are not like that. But the thing is when these new pet owners who have never owned a dog before are confronted with this information, they have absolutely no idea where to start and who to go to first. So they talk, you know, and it's like, it used to be, you know, people used to say, well, go to a dog show and look at the dogs that you want, you know, look at the dogs that you find appealing. The dog show is not the place to look for dogs. It isn't. For a variety.
Or my mom decided she wanted a Great Pyrenees because they were big and fluffy and you could hug them.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, for a variety of reasons, it's never.
I put a stop to that, but yeah.
Thank God. But the thing is it's like, where do people go when they're looking for a dog? Where do you direct them to go? I already told you my three. Where do you direct them to go? Because the vast majority of people are going to say, they're going to look at their neighbor or their friend and say, yeah, that's a really cool dog. I want one. Where did you get it? Or I remember having a dog like that as a kid. The old tropes, they're all still there. You know, Craigslist is not going to produce that for you. Where do people go to look for? How do they look for appropriate breeders?
One thing that I will tell people to do is, and this can be right, you have to find the right one. Talk to the breed rescue. If you're already settled on a breed or a few breeds, and okay, some breed rescues are just anti-breeder, you can't talk to them, but some of them are still old school. Some of them are partly run by breeders.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it'll be sub rosa what they tell you, but you ask, who do I avoid? And, you know, is there anyone that you recommend? And that may be more on a personal level. You may be talking to a volunteer or a board member or something, not on an organizational level. But, you know, I can quietly give you the list of really good marketers in my breed that are frequent flyers with rescue. When that dog is not working out, and they very often aren't working out, you know, they will literally say, oh, I can't take them back because blah, 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 blah.
Right.
You know, and the real reason is I have 2 more litters on the ground right now. Call rescue. Well,
right.
You know, they are known to rescue. And then there's breeders who are on the board of rescue. There are breeders who founded rescue. There are breeders who always do due diligence. You can talk to a breeder, and this is in addition to what you said. You can talk to a breeder who has nothing to sell you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And oftentimes people will describe what they want in my breed. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like my dogs, but you could do well with this other person's dog because there's a lot of variety in my breed.
Right.
If somebody's looking for a real hard cow dog, I'm not producing that. If somebody's looking for really, really just a pet, I'm going to send them over to some of the people who are doing the farm collies that are softer and easier and have less drive. And I know who those folks are. And they're going to be happier with that than with one of my monkeys who are very social and everything, but they got to do something.
Yeah. Yes. At 11, she's just now taking a seat. But yeah, and I mean, the thing is one of the primary concerns that I have is these people who are misguided into buying dogs that are too much dog for them. And I know it's like Julia had mentioned earlier, there are a lot of quote unquote working dog breeders who have really good top-notch stock, and they're selling to woefully inappropriate homes. And I'm
my warfare with the German Shepherd breeding community. With the
oh my God.
That's
I don't know if it's as bad with other working breeds, but there are shepherd breeders that I want to commend them for this great dog and then kick them in the nards for selling it the way they did.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying when Linda was getting your tech issues solved there. That's been my experience. It's a German Shepherd thing up here more than anything else. Like if I'm going to see badly placed Dobermans, I'm going to see them here, you know, but I don't see that as often, anywhere near as often as these Shepherds. And they are 100% working dogs with proven working parents. And, you know, I get it. There's 10 puppies in the litter. You're going to hold 1 or 2 back. You've got maybe a couple of regular people who you know are going to, you know, they're your club members or whatever, and they're going to take the dogs. But now you've still got the leftovers. You've got 4 or 5 dogs that maybe weren't hard enough to, you know, to go out on the trial field, but they're still working dogs. They're still drivey. They're still pushy. They might have some level of dog aggression in them. And you're selling them to people who want to, like, seriously, live in an apartment with them.
I'm seeing
take an elevator.
Malinois are just flavor of the month.
It's happening to them too. I'm starting to see a lot of really inappropriate Malinois.
Yep. Well, I'm actually seeing. So most search and rescue handlers do not need as much hardness and drive in a dog as some of them are deluded into believing.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to live with that dog and train it in SAR 1 or 2 days a week and field however often you field, but mostly you're going to live with that dog.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And these first time handlers go out and get a Malinois.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the same with the retrievers. We were talking about that. It's like there's a difference between a field-bred Labrador Retriever and any other retriever on the face of the planet. You can't live with those dogs. You cannot. It's you. If you are not, they're Malinois without the teeth aspect.
Mm-hmm.
They really are. They're keenly intelligent, and if you don't occupy them, they're going to find something to do, much to their detriment. And if people are like, you know, oh, I want that dog. Look at that. You know, I mean, that dog's got a lot of go, and oh my God, I could do all kinds of wonderful. And then 2 months later, they're like, can you take this dog off my hands?
Right. What about the Aussies?
I told you not to do that. This is no longer my responsibility. Thank you for calling. Have a nice day.
Have you been seeing the Aussies too? Because I've been seeing a lot of that too.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a lot of inappropriately placed.
Yeah, I'm just seeing bad Aussies. I'm seeing double Merles everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're not drivey and too much for pet homes. They're just not good dogs.
They're hysterical biters, most of them.
Yeah. I love Aussies, or I used to. It's getting harder.
Yeah.
It's the same with German Shepherds. I had Shepherds. I bred Shepherds. I love Shepherds. I was seriously contemplating getting a Shepherd, and then I'm like, I don't have that kind of time to look for a good one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Same here.
Yeah.
I had 3 over the course of almost 30 years, and I think I'm done.
Yeah. There was Mel, and there was who after Mel?
Sophie after Mel. And Lily was our first star dog, and there was
Lily. I forgot. I forgot.
Lily, yeah. There was not a more perfect first search partner genetically engineered in the history of the world. She was perfect for that. If we had gotten another dog as our first dog and tried to do the same things, I don't think the outcome would have been the same.
Right.
And she, I got Lily in 91. At that time, if you got a dog from German parents, you got a working dog. That's what it was.
You were safe.
Yep. And then by the time I got Mel in 94, her grandsire, Uran, was the last show seeger that was considered a good working dog. And already, like, her sire already had a little bit of that banana back. It wasn't too terribly bad. We didn't know what was coming, right? But her dam was full working lines, so she was pretty well put together. And then Sophie came from an excellent working breeding program, probably, one of the top 2 or 3 in this country.
That's Julia Priest.
Julia Priest. But she wasn't like what Julia usually produces, and she was very hard to live with. That litter was not a nick. And that by the way, did not show up till she was about 8 months old. And it showed her litter mates same time.
Yeah. So it was just that part of the nick that.
Yeah. So, I mean, she was a great search dog, but and she actually was really basically calm around the house. She just made me want to eat a pistol.
Yeah.
I've had dogs like that.
Yeah.
In Spain too, but there was nobody home there.
Yeah. I remember some of the stories you used to tell about her.
Oh.
But the thing is that my primary concern is, where this is all going is essentially, as trainers, we are always the last in the line. So you get a person who wants a dog and they go through all these chains and they acquire a dog, and the dog ends up not being exactly what they had hoped for because they've been misled or outright lied to or whatever. And then all of a sudden we're the ones that end up having to deal with the consequences of that act. Right. And I'm like, at this point in time, I'm like, when people ask me about the kind of dog they should get, I tell them, don't get a dog. If you've never owned one, don't get one. Don't get one. I've actually come full circle where it's like before you could actually say, you know what? There's nothing wrong with a nice Labrador retriever. There's nothing wrong with a nice golden retriever. There's nothing wrong with XYZ number of different breeds that didn't have the health issues they have today, that didn't have the behavior and temperament issues that they have today. And now all of a sudden we have this plethora of dogs that you can't do anything with because they're either psychotic messes or they're genetic freaks, right? And it's like I honestly have gotten to the point now to where it's like, I'll be honest with you, if you're going to get a dog, don't get a purebred. If you're going to get a dog.
I remember early in my training career when I was recommending Cavaliers to people who wanted a small family dog.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
They're delightful, but they're going to die horribly. It's just.
Yeah, it sucks. That was always my go-to for family dogs too. And then you got to prepare people. Yeah, this dog will be wonderful. And then you're going to cry for like 5 years.
Yeah. And it's like, it's with pointers. I had pointers years and years and years ago, it was not unusual for them to live into the high teens. I personally know of more than one dog that lived into their 20s. I haven't been able to get one to successfully live past, let's see, Patch was the last one that I had that lived past 15. And every dog since then, 13, 11, Cotton 9, Zvi, 2 days before his 7th birthday. I'm like, yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, and I don't necessarily, I don't know what the word is. I'm not, unlike Terrier Man and unlike several other people, I don't believe that crossbreeding dogs is the end all be all if you don't have those health performance things in checked. I believe garbage in, garbage out, and I don't have a problem with doodles. Not the choice for me, but if you're going to do that, make sure that you at least are working with breeders, and they're out there that actually help test their dog.
Yeah, they exist.
Right? There's a few of them. There's one actually up here in Rising Sun. Oh yeah, one of the two.
So
Rising Sun, and I've handled quite a few of her dogs, and I've been very, very impressed with her dogs. And she has them all kinds of different sizes, but their temperaments are delicious. Their health is very, very good. And they're easy to train. They're not slothful, dowdy, they're not super nervy, and they're just, they're nice, happy. They're kind of like the Cavaliers back from 15, 20 years ago. Super, very cheerful. They didn't have a bad day. Never had a bad day. Very forgiving, very, just super nice dogs. But they don't have enough. They don't produce enough. Thank God, because I think their quality control would suffer. But there's not enough like them to be able to do anything similar.
Because that sounds like a unicorn.
There's 2 in this state, actually. There's one that's Southern Maryland somewhere that actually has produced some fairly nice dogs. I haven't seen as many of hers as I have this woman from Rising Sun. So I'm a little bit biased, because when people are saying, if I get a doodle, where do I go? That's where I send them.
Yeah, because like when you say don't get a purebred, that's the thing. Then where do you send them if you don't have somebody like that? Because then, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to go bring something back from, the DR, or they're going to,
right.
They're going to go and get one of the, the dumpster puppies from Alabama that, grows up.
Well, the thing is, two lovely litters within weeks of each other. The one that Heather and Ken posted, where I just recently got a puppy from, right? And then the litter of pointer mixed puppies that I've been posting for the last week or so. And there's actually websites, not websites. There's actually Facebook groups that are dedicated to performance bred mixed bred dogs, right? That actually do health testing and things like that. Now I know for a fact that both of the parents in the pointer litter are health tested, and both of them come from really high end field dogs. I mean, these aren't just chumps. Some, Joe Bohunk down in the cornfields of wherever decided that he was going to let his dogs have a Noops litter. These are really, really high performance dogs, and have the records to prove it. But the bottom line is no one wants mixed breds because you can't have fun with them and all the big events. Well, I know there's someone out there that wants just a nice, clean, good working hunting dog.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can't get any better than this, right? I lucked out.
That second male that you posted a nice side shot of him, and I just about drooled. And I have no use for such a dog, right?
The liver, that's a bitch. The liver dog. That's a bitch.
No, not the liver dog.
Oh yeah. I know which one you're talking about. That's a stunning animal.
That is an outstanding looking puppy. If I had a use for such a dog, man, I'd be sorely.
And it's like I said, if I didn't already have one, I would probably get one, but I would not be able to do a dog like that justice. I couldn't. That needs to be that person's sole thing, right? Because that's how much they're going to require. And I can't imagine those dogs being unsuccessful in the field.
Yeah. They just looked like they were ready to head out.
Oh, yeah, do the things. Okay, so basically, Any parting comments? Because we're rolling up on 2 hours now.
Well, thanks for hooking me in here, but I was just doing some construction work and listening to you guys.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm glad you were able to
I'm glad
come
you
in.
came along.
So we'll be calling on you in the future.
Yeah.
I'll send you a secret pass to get in.
With that new puppy, I'm really interested to see how this litter turns out, and I'll be able to watch 3 of them then. And I have no read on how Beauceron are. I mean, I've known one of Kathy's a little bit, but that's about it. So
yeah, they're slow. They're not slow. They're slow to mature. They're very stoic.
Yeah,
they're very stoic. And then I've known the males to be a little on the hot side, but the bitches for the most part are fairly social, very smart, and they're low key smart. They're not like in your face Malinois German Shepherd rooster, right? they're basically like they're observant. If that makes sense.
Yeah, we've got a male and a bitch in our larger search team now. It'll
from
be
this litter.
From this litter.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I posted. The 2 handlers brought them to training, and we were doing initial puppy problems. One working in trailing, one working in air scenting, in the dark, in a strange place, with stranger runaways right away at 8-9 weeks. And these puppies were like, "Yeah, I can do that. That seems like a thing I should do." And that's what we should expect of working prospects.
Right.
That's not what I see a lot of the time.
Yeah, she's been here, like I said, she's tapped out now. I mean, she's been tapped out since about 3:00 this afternoon. But she already, I had her outside flipping around with the dogs, and Rooster, of course, was a total asshole, and she's like, yeah, I'm not really keen on that. So I turned her back loose with Pearl and had her run around with her a little bit. And she actually had the wherewithal to pick up her leash and carry it so that she wouldn't trip over it. And I'm like, this is prescience. This is not something that you see in other dogs. And I'm like, I could encourage that all day, every day. That's exactly what I want, is a dog like Pearl that is able to figure stuff out without having to sit there and contemplate their navel for a lifetime. Right? Okay. So anything else, Julia, before we head out?
No, I mean, this was exactly what I was hoping we'd get into. It's tough. We're spoiled for choice with dog breeders now. And I think, as trainers, that's we don't, I know I don't, like you said, you only have seen a couple of people who've taken advantage of your services to help them find puppies. I very rarely ever have anybody asking unless it's Dobermans, and by the time they've asked, they've already made up their mind.
Yeah,
they want me to validate it, which I won't, because it's usually not the right one.
Yep.
But yeah, it's tougher than ever, I think, on a lot of levels. But I'm glad I hope we were able to kind of uncover some stuff for people tonight if they were dialed in here. So
I hope so. I really do, because it's, and again, it's like I said at the very top of the when we first started, this isn't a slag on anybody. It's not a slag on breeders. It's basically to try and help people make good decisions about where to get their dogs from and what they should be looking for. And that's, it's important because, again, we're the ones that are most highly impacted because we're the ones that see these dogs. I mean, The vets do. They throw drugs at it. We have other people, the groomers do, and they're just like, oh my God, what do I do with this vicious animal? And the people who actually have to interact with these dogs, but no one's willing to come forward and say, you probably shouldn't have done that, right? Or in the future, maybe you need to look something more on the line of, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with a nice Labrador Retriever. You don't really need an African Boerboel, right? Suburban Sally does not need an African Boerboel.
Yeah.
Or a Pressa or any of these other breeds. But, here we are. Oh, I wanted one. They look so cool. And now
they look cool.
My kids.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And everyone that's watching, thank you for your patience. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Linda.